What's going on, everybody? We're back, video number 2 on the 50,000 subscriber giveaway. This is the beginning of the truck that we started to show a little bit of in the first video. Since then, you can see, I think we've decided on the creep body. At the first video, we were kind of going back and forth between possibly using the Proline Rock Van or this J Concepts Creep. After looking at just the size and how we would have to do the build, I think that this is just a better suited build for what this giveaway really is. In the end, I think this is just going to fit the channel so much better. Whoever wins it, this is something that's really more what I think would be kind of like an extension of what I would want compared to the other option. But besides just choosing the body for the build, a lot else has changed. You can see that it's already sitting on its own 4 feet, 4 legs, I don't know, sitting on wheels and tires. We've decided on throwing the Proline high racks on here, which we showed in the first. These are the 4.75 inch tall versions. And we've mounted those on a set of Vanquish 1.9 machetes. These are actually the V1s. Clear wheel with a black beadlock ring and 350 hubs all the way around. In the very first video, I had talked about getting the stance where I wanted, and I think that we're actually in a much better place right now than we were in that first video. The Enduro definitely suffers from a really tall ride height. So it's one of the things that needs to be done just as soon as possible with the Enduro, is trying to get that thing down, try and get the drive shaft angles a little bit better, and just try and take advantage of the high clearance chassis that the Enduro has but doesn't take any use of. So since then, I've ripped off almost every piece of the chassis except the front servo mount for now. Everything else though is in this bag. I'll hold on to all these parts for now because there's some things that we may be able to use still. Like maybe we'll be able to repurpose the battery tray. Possibly we can take off the receiver box and reuse it, maybe. But beyond that, the rest of it is just going to get thrown into the spare parts box. Now I have removed both the front and rear bumper cross brace. And the reason that I've removed both the front and rear cross braces is because I will want to do a custom front bumper, but more so than that, I wanted to get this body cheated rearward. That way I've got a nice approach angle. I've got plenty of room to clear these big tires without doing a bunch of wheel well modification. But with that, then I also needed to stretch the rear wheelbase. And I've done that at this point already, at least to where I want to mock it up. We can adjust a little bit further from there. Currently, I've got this sitting at about 12.6 inch wheelbase. I wouldn't mind getting it out to about 12.8, possibly 13, depending if I push the front forward just a little bit more. Now I'll be cutting off the front of this chassis and then we'll weld a bumper up that sits nice and tight, giving us a nice approach angle, something nice and narrow. This will probably be built roughly class 2 rules. Probably not 100% geared at class 2, but in the end, I think it'll probably be a pretty decent choice if you wanted to run it in that class. In the rear, I removed that cross member because the rear bumper mount hangs way down on the Enduro. Again, not something I'm after. I want to keep that rear bumper tucked as far up as possible, and probably we're just going to integrate all of that into some rear cage work anyway. So again, it was a part that wasn't needed for now, just get rid of it. To get the ride height in order, what I'm using right now is a set of shock towers from RC Fab Tabs. Now these came in a kit that had a bunch of different brackets, and they came in really handy for what I'm going to be using here. I think that I'll probably use these front tabs because they're just about perfect. I think that they're going to give me a really nice place to mount them. I think that they look good and appropriate in general. Overall, I think that's a great tab to use. In the rear, I'm not going to be using them. I'm going to remove them from here, but for now, it gives me a place to kind of base my shock mounting tabs off of. So got them on there for mock-up. Those will get removed. Now you will also see that I've got some side plates on this truck currently as well. These were also from RC Fab Tabs, and they've got upper link mounts that'll go on here, and it gives me a nice big area to weld cage work too, especially the sliders. So on the passenger side, you'll see that it's got upper link mounting locations on both the front and rear because this does have a 3-link front. So that means that it's not needed on the other side. So on the other side, it only has the link mounting positions in the rear. Nice to have both of those options included in that RC Fab Tabs kit. And being that these are based off of an SCX-10 style skid plate bolt pattern, and the Enduro uses that same bolt pattern, everything bolted right up, no modifications needed at this point. Located in the middle of this truck, now you can see that Team Garage Hack 2-low transmission is officially mounted in place. I've got the Delrin skid plate that came with the transmission mounted into the chassis, and we did have to do a little bit of link, geometry adjustment because the link mounting pockets are not in the exact same place. I did stretch the rear links already. I've got a couple of high clearance links on there right now. Maybe those will stay, maybe they won't. We'll decide as we get further down the road. My pinion angle in the rear is just about perfect. The front, I feel like I could extend the lowers a couple of millimeters at least to get everything flattened out a little bit more like I want. Those are some of the fine details that we'll have to get into once we really start buttoning everything up. Some people were asking about this transmission. Now, the benefit of this transmission, other than being nice and compact and low, is that it does have a 30% overdrive ratio. Super high overdrive ratio in general, but I run about 30% in my VS410 Pro with the portal rear axle, so it should be a pretty familiar driving experience to me, and I think that decent power, you're not really going to have too much of an issue, and it does really make for a capable truck. Now, I don't have a panhard mount on this chassis at this time. Since I removed the stock plastic shock towers, that had the panhard mount integrated into it. So right now my panhard link is just kind of flopping around. What I'll do is I'll weld up my own version. It'll attach likely to the shock tower tabs that I've got on the front now. So as you see it here, we have a pretty decent roller to start with the exception of still having to sort out a panhard. Everything else is kind of sitting on its own. We are going to leave these Enduro shocks from the kit because they're a really nice shock. Another item that showed up in the mail just the other day and is going to be a nice fit for this giveaway. This is the new 770 winch from Power Hobby. This is an integrated all-in-one winch with an external spool. This is just exactly how it comes, and all you have to do is plug it into receiver. There's no external winch controller. It's waterproof, and this thing has a ton of power. 760 ounce-inches rated at 8.4 volts with really good speed still. So it should have lots of power, lots of speed still. I think it's going to be a great fit for this build. Now, this is a fairly tall assembly though. The distance from the mounting ears to the top of the servo winch case is a little tall. And then of course we've got that external spool. So if you try to put it in the existing winch mounting location for the element, it doesn't work. It runs into the axle almost immediately just because we lowered it so much. So it's not going to go there. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to machine a new servo and winch mount, and I'm going to take this winch and I'm going to mount it basically directly behind the regular steering servo. That will allow me to keep the spool and everything as low as possible. It'll clear everything throughout the entire suspension travel, and I think it'll just help me keep it as clean as possible. Otherwise, I'm looking at, having to space the winch up, and then I'm worried about body clearance. All kinds of little issues here and there. I think that the best possible location is going to be right here behind the steering servo, and it'll still give me a nice straight line that I can integrate the winch fair lead into that front bumper that I plan to make. So thanks to Power Hobby for donating that 770 winch. I think it's going to be a nice addition to this truck. I didn't initially plan on adding a winch to this truck. They asked me if I'd like to try it. I said, absolutely. I've got a truck that I'm looking to give away soon and wanted to put it in there. And they were absolutely fine with that. Showed up quickly. And it's just going to make this truck that much nicer in the end. But it is going to force me to put a nicer radio with this than I had initially planned on, but I think we can handle it. Currently, I have a burned up tactic servo in the steering servo location. And when I mean burned up, I mean like it's actually been on fire. And that's because this is the servo that I use to mock up chassis and things like that when I'm welding. So it's been around high heat. It's just my placeholder. I can connect a servo horn to it though, make sure my steering geometry all clears. I can just check things out. It's always nice to have kind of a bunk servo around for these type of uses for me, especially when I'm trying to weld things and I just want to make sure that I've got clearance for a tube or anything like that, but I don't really want to keep taking the servo in and out. This is why we can't have nice things. So I'll get to designing up that mount, I'll 3D print a prototype, and then I'll plan to machine it out of Delrin. I recently decided to pick up a CNC router for here at home, which is going to allow me to machine a lot more of my own parts here easily So I think that that's going to be one of the first projects that's going to take use of that. Now, after kind of getting the initial placement and mounting of this creep body in place and seeing just how nice and tucked in that 2-low transmission from TGH sits in this truck, I think that we're going to be able to build a pretty decent interior for this thing as well. I thought that it'd be pretty appropriate for me just to throw a bomber interior in there, but I think that maybe we'll go a little bit further with it. In reality, what my true plan is to kind of build the shape, and then I'm just gonna send it to Matt and try and make him detail it out for me. Currently, my biggest concern with the build is the rear cab and bed area. What I would like to do is separate the cab and bed and possibly remake the bed myself with some stamped aluminum panels, possibly, a kind of a true bed floor. But this is one of those bodies that's got those ugly triangles in the cab corners, and those are super annoying. I hate to see them, and honestly, I'm gonna have to cut them out to do what I want to do, which is gonna leave me these big cuts in the backside of this cab. So I may end up having to try and make my own complete back of this cab as well. I think we'll be able to hide it as needed with the tube work and the bed, everything that we plan to do back there, but it's just one of those things that's annoying. I wish they would get rid of that. So many other companies now have been able to pull off the rear cab in a square corner without having to integrate these any longer. So I feel like J-Concept should catch up in that area. Now, if you haven't seen the first video or any of the scale news about this truck, the point of the build is to give this away once I hit 50,000 subscribers here on YouTube. So if you're not subscribed yet, make sure and hit that button first of all. Then in the description below, there's a link to the Gleam website, which is the website that I use to aggregate all of your entries. It collects your entries and it chooses the winner. That way I don't have to try and figure out who entered and how many times. And another benefit of it is that you can enter daily. So if you make sure you come back, check that link, you can enter daily to increase your chances to win. And hopefully you come back and watch more videos. I appreciate all of you guys who watch, subscribe, enter to win. Really hoping that this truck goes to somebody who watches regularly. Now, we've already started to kind of add some nice parts to this truck, but a bunch of other parts are on their way. So there's been a number of other vendors who have already just reached out to offer up parts to add to it. I haven't asked anybody for parts. I didn't plan to ask anybody for parts. And as those parts start to roll in, we'll thank all of those vendors individually because I really appreciate everything that they've done so far. And already at this point, thanks again to TGH for the transmission, Power Hobby for the new Winch edition that we're going to throw in here. And of course, Vanquish for the wheels, the Element chassis, and A-Main for so many of the things that I buy from them. And also thanks to Suits for donating the paint job that will eventually find its way onto this truck. We'll have more updates on this vehicle coming soon because we've already got a bunch of other parts on the way. Power system's gonna go in this thing. The final servo that's going to go in here will be here soon. I also hope to jump right into the metalwork soon as well, because that's when things really start to get fun and interesting. One thing I have to start working on pretty soon is the style of the rear cage that I'm gonna go with. Whether it's gonna be kind of a long tube back or kind of, shorter down tubes. Just, am I gonna pinch it? Am I gonna leave it full width? I don't know. So many of those decisions. That is one of the hardest things for me. It's just the style of the rear tubes. That it defines one of these trucks. It really does. So it's one of those things that I will probably sit here in this chair and just hold a piece of wire and move it around this way, that way, move it, trying to decide which way this thing will finally end up. I definitely want to put like a full pickup bed floor in it. I want to use the metal stamping method that I've been kind of developing using 3D printed tools to do it. I think that would make a nice bed floor for this. I used that on the Woods Runner project and really loved how that turned out. So it's something that I think would look great integrated into this vehicle. Is there any interesting features we should try to integrate? Should we do metal tube fenders or, a full grill guard? What should we do for headlights? All of these questions. These are things that we're gonna have to decide before too long because I want to get started on this metalwork. But that's our update for this week on the build. Thanks as always for watching. Make sure and subscribe and make sure to click the link below, enter the giveaway, check back daily so you can get more entries. Again, thanks for checking in. Thanks for stopping. Thanks for subscribing. Most importantly, hit the like button before you leave. Notification bell so you see the videos as soon as they get uploaded. Thanks again. see you on the next one.